African economies spent over $160 billion just on debt service. Now, that was not just 2.5 times more than combined debt service costs in 2010, it also crowded out spending on healthcare and education. Earlier on, I spoke to Amir Ben Yahmed. He's Chief Executive Officer at Jeune Afrique. With 4 weeks to go to the Africa CEO Forum, that's the largest gathering of the government and the private sector in Africa pretty much every year, we explored the top 3 ideas to be discussed in detail in mid-May.
First, we have a clear change in terms of protectionism. Trade is becoming more transactional, if not to say more confrontational. So that's a very clear trend number one. Trump is an everyday illustration of that. The second challenge is the reduced amount of liquidity for Africa, because capital is flying to safety. You have development aid, which is drying up, and you have another also looming threat is the fight against immigration in many countries that is also threatening remittances. This is happening at a time where debt to GDP are at all-time high on the continent, and where our countries have little resources and little room to maneuver.
I'm glad you brought up the question around capital, because one of the themes that, especially post-pandemic, one of the things I keep hearing every time I attend these conferences is heads of state, heads of government, finance ministers, they keep saying, look, we think we're being unfairly rated by ratings agencies, mostly from the West, Moody's, Fitch, S&P, and so on and so forth. And you've organized a debate on the first day of the event addressing that very question. Could you walk us through some of the feedback that you often get from heads of state and government and why they think they're being unfairly rated? Because, as to your point, there's a couple of African sovereigns that have come to the market this year, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire. They've ended up borrowing money at relatively expensive rates, over 9% on the US dollar, which is pretty pricey.
That's true, but that's definitely an issue of sovereignty, like all the rest of the issue that we're going to talk about and during the CEO Forum. That's clear that the current financial situation is a hindrance for Africa's development, and the capacity of governments to go on the international markets and borrow at a reasonable rate. And I think there's a lot of progress that we can make towards that target, but also we should be balanced on that idea, because I was reading the other day the Argentina has gone through 23 IMF bailout, and I've been looking at the coupon that they've been paying on the euro bonds or dollar denominated bonds, and they're basically between 8 to 10% interest rates. We also can't deny that we have governments that may default. Kenya may default, Ghana may default. Remember, the president of Ghana made a very viral speech on TV saying that Ghana should be self-sufficient in terms of financing, just to go 2 or 3 years later through an IMF bailout. So we cannot deny our debt to level GDP. We cannot deny our default. So, and that's why some of the finance ministers have been, this issue has been really polarizing between the finance ministers. A lot of them have been saying, okay, we need to also show that we can honor our commitments, and we need to show that we have success stories. We need to show that we are a reliable financing partner. So at the same time, we need to work on how to get better financing condition, and we have also local markets to go through this.
Indeed, and that's turning onto local sources on the continent, because so far I think what usually has happened is countries will borrow within their own domestic markets, and yet there are these pools of capital right across the continent that other countries simply are not tapping into. Say, for example, you're in Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, you want to raise cash for a housing project, or you want to build a toll road, you tap into pension funds, for example, in South Africa, hypothetically. Might we see conversations around that, tapping into continental pools of capital rather than just sticking to either foreign capital in the West or just our tiny little domestic markets?
Oh, that's definitely one of the most important conversations that needs to happen at the CEO Forum, because we're talking a lot about sovereignty, and this conversation is happening at a moment where most of the international banks have retreated from Africa. And so now we have a clear mandate to grow our financial institutions from on the one point, to make our banks or insurance real continental powerhouses, so that they have the means to be a financing partner. And we definitely need to work on a common market of financial services and trying to make investment from one country, from one region to the other, very easy, so that our institutional investors, whether it's pension funds, insurance company, have ways to deploy their liquidity. That's a clear answer to all the financing challenges. All the governments have identified that issue. I think one of the discussion that needs to be held during the CO forum is how we can make the CFTA a reality, especially in the financial service market. And that's one of the things that unfortunately in the last 5 or 6 years have moved forward too in a very slowly. And that's definitely one of the things that needs to be addressed.